Hi there, this is Potatoes Gang, and it's a very, very important subject for us to engage. You know, any society that does not provide equal opportunity for all of its people sub-optimizes. If some societies play with 100% of their talent and another plays with only 50% of their talent, they can only be half as competitive as that other society. And this is why the gender issue is not just a nice social flavor thing. It's about how society truly makes sustained progress. In recent years, we've seen Nigeria do remarkably well in the education of its women. We have some bright women coming out of schools from all over the world. But we've seen also the possibilities of women advance, challenged by the nature of our changing environment. We've seen our politics get more violent, get more uncivil, and it's definitely more challenging for a woman to emerge. On the other hand, you go to a country like Rwanda, and you see half or more of the parliamentarians are women. You go to South Africa, you see women making policy decisions all the time. And then we talk a lot in Nigeria, but the reality is that there are few women who are making major decisions. How are we going to ensure that the women rising phenomenon is sustained and goes to the next level? How are we going to do that? Joe, you have had plenty of work in this territory. You driving Women Arise, you know, we deliberately made the topic not Women Arise. Because that would be not unfair. You run Women Arise. I'm chairman of Women Arise.
Yes,
so, so it would have been unfair to call it Women Arise. So we call it Women Rising.
Women Rising. Well, just like Prof, you've rightly observed, there's no country that can progress with over half of its population left behind. And we see that despite the fact that we have our numerical strength, that women are still marginalized, they are still oppressed. The Beijing Conference of 1985 dwelled on women empowerment. But as we speak, if in politics, at our upper chambers, the Senate, out of 109 senators, we only have 7. And then we also have 360 House of Representative members. We only have 22 women. So how can we advance? We are talking about women rising. We have women that have excelled. So a lot more needs to be done. Just last week, the women property, Married Women Property Act, 1882, was passed. Very positive. So with this, we'll be able to put smile on the faces of some of our women, because it talks about gender parity, it talks about equal rights. And for men, I don't know men who are not comfortable. Marriage is not competition, but to complement each other. Right. So for women who are thrown out of marriage, women, widows who are also thrown out, with this act, I'm sure that we see lots of smile. And
I want to add, Joe, that it goes without saying, it's not doing women a favor by asking that we need more of such representations. I was glad with the Not Too Young to Run bill that a woman appeared in the horizon. I never knew her, I never met her. Her name is Eunice Atu Ajide. And she followed, she followed that with a seminal book. The girl said, I can. And I think the more we begin to put some of this intellectual fervor into our women folk, we'll have had the first woman governor, Al-Hassan, but for one thing or the other that happened. And Prof, you are very, very correct. You don't expect, with the kind of culture we have, a woman, although we are seeing some snippets of that, you expect a woman now to be carrying cord girls and be cross-carpeting and doing all what's not.
No, are you trying to indict women?
No,
we've not been doing much. Because we have really been doing...
what you're saying...
No. The first thing you talked about women, what did you say?
Well, I said it's not doing women a favor because we are doing very, very well.
Okay.
And I'm a living example to tell you that women, apart from the professions, and then coming back to politics, and then I mentioned Atuegide. So I'm supporting women. However, you even brought something in which we need to tackle. And that is the fact that even amongst women, I am not sure all the women are behind women per se.
Okay, so the thing is, so with that, I think that the important thing is that we have a choice. It doesn't matter whether all women are behind this drive for women progress or not, but for those of us who want to progress the way we want, we should have an opportunity. And then, you know, the act that you brought, I was very surprised to see that we had that sort of act supporting women from way back when. Okay, so yes, so we've always had, I think that we've had opportunity. Yes, there's the fact that many women are not willing to push for the things that they should have, but there are also many more women who want certain things and they're held back. I run an annual conference on sustainability in extractive industries. You would not believe that they would rather, when I go to Abuja, when I go to the offices in Abuja, they'd rather talk to my male colleague who's in his 20s than to deal with me. They'll say, that girl, she came. And I'm wondering which girl, I'm looking behind me.
Who are you talking about? The women there.
The men.
The
men. Okay? And then there was a time that the hotel double booked us and we couldn't, so we were insisting and I had to join and say, no, we must take this space because we paid for it. And some of the men were like, Madam, why are you shouting? Like, don't raise your voice, you're a woman. And I say, so these are some of the challenges. So there are certain rules, there's certain laws already protecting us, but implementation is poor. And a lot of the time it's men, but then also women need to be schooled. Women need to be schooled, and women need to realize that we do have a voice. It's interesting, again, that in the olden days, it was always women who provided for the home. You know, women they went to the farms. My two grandmothers from my mother and father's sides, my two grandmothers were the breadwinners in terms of finances. So they had men who still took the money though. But we have had these opportunities, and I think that it's time that we're more deliberate and that we have movements like yours which deliberately push women to the fore, which deliberately force women to think about the strength that we have. I think that if women come forward more forcibly and take what is ours, then, you know, the sky is the limit.
But you see, part of the problem, I think that's part of where Akin was probably trying to go to, is that in some cultures, women do a lot more to stop the progress of women than even the men. Yes. However, it should not be used as an excuse, because people use that excuse all the time, but these women, for example, widowhood. I'm very familiar with the widowhood issues because I've run a social enterprise that looks after poor widows for about 30 years or so now. And they will come and say, oh, for example, it's the Umwada who make the, you know.
I know.
Yeah, but the men can get those Umwada to behave properly, quote unquote, if they understand the consequence for all of society of those unhealthy practices. So in many ways, it's a cop-out. It's an excuse that is the women doing to women because they are socialized to do that.
Yeah.
And so education is really the key to all of this.
Yes.
How do we educate people so that they understand that this is not about power, it's not a tussle. I mean, Joe talked about marriage being complementing rather than competition. It's not this demand.
I know. You know and so women need to hear words. The play by Ifeoma Fafunwa deals with many of these issues. It deals with the matter of widowhood and other women and men saying you must sit there. If you shout, it means you killed your husband. It deals with women getting to a certain age and everybody saying you must get married. From, oh, you must get married to a very rich man to, if he has hands and legs, bring him home. You know, so these are some of the challenges that women have to face. Okay, but those things are educating women and men. My son is, my last child, he's 14 months old. He's been to two Women's Days events, 2018 and 2019, okay? Because I want him to consciously realize that as a man, he has to understand that women are equal to men, okay? Women should have the same rights as them. But then you have women who have different rules. So they have gotten to the top and then they think that when other young women come, they also think, who are you? What do you think you are? They also enjoy being at the top.
I think that there should be a change of mindset. There's something that's erroneous impression that some people say women are each other's enemies. But I just try to encourage women that if you see women that have excelled, let's try and encourage them rather than the pull down syndrome. Some people, their tongue is worse than weapon of mass destruction. They use it to pull down the person, tear down the person. And that's why I like the topic of this year, but the balance the better. That's balancing in all spheres of life, be it social, be it economy, be it political. And like Prof has said, education remains critical.
I will also say, yes, education, depending on how you look at education, the indoctrination that we have, Bekeme, what you said you found in the North, I see that very often. I know some cultures say, oh, no, a woman cannot lead from the religious perspective. Those are the things that we must begin to continue to whittle down. I was very, very, very glad that Eunice, that I mentioned, was able to hold her own intellectual lead amongst the men, amongst the young people that were going to rise. There was a time I was at a public function and she was going to be drowned. And I said, no, you cannot drown my voice. And which is the message we should be sending across. Now, also, realistically speaking, as I always say to young people, middle age, and even those who are older, it's not about the fact that you are coming out and you are not making it. You come out, you don't make it. It doesn't stop you from keep on. So you keep on the ideology. Sambo Sawaba was a voice all through her politics in the North. And
that very important point, but that's also a good point for us to take a break because we want to hear the voices of those out there and, see how we can shape our world because it's about impact, how we make impact, how people are affected by the thoughts that flow out here. We'll be right back.
When the government is saying that way, it will be reduced. We don't want people that are just striving to get there.
Women can escape poverty by getting empowered. I believe in the adage that says when you empower a girl child, you empower a whole community. And there is I've not seen a game winning with half of its player on the bench, which means taking, for instance, Manchester United and Barca. If half of Manchester United team are on the bench, trust me, there is no miracle that can happen for that team to win. Which means if we don't include women, if we don't involve women in anything that we do, if women are not empowered, then our nation, the fight against poverty, the fight against climate change, the fight against so many things cannot be overcome. So in other words, we have to invest in our girl child. So first of all, let our girl child be involved in skills. Let there be skill acquisition. Let's get them involved in STEM projects. We have so many men in science, science field and all of that, engineering, doing amazing things. Let's encourage our girls to do the same. Enroll them in mathematics class, enroll them in projects that has to do with science. Let them try to do something with materials in their environment. That way, we are sure our nation and our girl will be able to take over the world and do amazing things. Thank you.
Women are rising across the world. Women are leading top positions. Women are leading Fortune 500 companies these days. They improve their skills. Skill improvement is very, very important. And when you improve your skill as a woman, you find that you climb the ladder to success easily. You need to learn every day. Learn from people who have been there before you. There's nothing, absolutely nothing you're doing right now that somebody hasn't done before. So that's something that we also need to think about when it comes to skill improvement. Find opportunities where they are. There's so many opportunities for you to rise. If you're an entrepreneur, if you're a career woman, find opportunities that will help you grow in your field. You can find accelerator programs that will give you funding if it's funding you're looking for, or if you're looking for training programs, you can take advantage of training programs like the She Means Business program organized by She Leads Africa. And there's even this Widows Center that's helping widows and women build themselves in entrepreneurship as well.
And we are back. This is still Patitos Gang. We're talking about women rising. Now, part of what we've been talking about is that there's been legislation that should facilitate things. I mean, let's face it, we had some awful practices in eastern Nigeria, for example, that were stopped via legislation in terms of the USU system, for example, and all of that. Now, widowhood rights issues. In fact, the Center for the Widow Support Center that is run out of CVL has had workshops and seminars and collaborated with somebody who wrote a PhD thesis on that subject, and ran annual seminars to try and educate on that. Now, affirmative action is also something that is important to advance. I mean, we're saying, oh, there were only 9 women in the Senate. Could there have been, well, if not a law, an executive order that says to the political parties, 25% of all the candidates that you field must statutorily, so to speak almost, be female. And then, you can see if there are not enough coming forward, what do you do, how do you encourage it, and stuff like that. But affirmative action is about representation. It's not about stopping some people and allowing some people. Yeah. I like to tell people, I think in 1948, a guy called Thomas Kingsley wrote a book, was titled Representative Bureaucracy, in which long before affirmative action in the United States, the ideas of affirmative action were advanced. And it's not about stopping some people, advancing some people. It's about making sure that those who make decisions regarding a population must have input from that population. Otherwise, they may not be effective in making that decision. And so, affirmative action is something that can be implemented without it becoming the kind of notorious federal character, stuff like that.
Yes, affirmative action has to be implemented to the letters. And then when you look at some of these political parties, there's no internal democracy. You find, and I tell our women that if you are made deputy this, deputy that, if you have a brand new car, you might not need that spare tire until after 6, 7 years or 8 years. And our women must have the passion, the determination. They must be properly informed. It's not that they should make themselves sign of pity. And we also find out that without balancing the home front, some of these things might serve as inhibition. When you talk about widowhood rights, we've seen a lot. We've handled more than 30 cases. I want to tell you that we've only been successful in about 3 or 4. But with this Married Women Property Act of 1882 that has just newly passed, I'm sure that a lot of our widows can now go back to sleep. Some of our men are scared stiff. Oh, the wife will kill them off. Is that no? That is not it. We are talking about parity. We are talking about equal rights. And this also, the government should also have political will in ensuring that this affirmative action is implemented.
The affirmative action in line with the Millennium Development Goal 5, which talks about gender equality and equal rights to women. I will say equal rights to women. I have sat in classroom with women, and I've seen women beat a lot of men's scare ceiling. Not necessarily because they were propped up, because I think they were intelligent enough to do that. I am also a living witness to the fact that lately we've had all-female crew pilots and Nigerians within my country with pride. A woman holds her shoulders up here, and she's a captain in one of the international flights. My point, again, I go back to where I started from. We are not doing women any favor. They will compete where culture or the environmental factors are such that we want to put women down. We say no. We are going to hold our governments accountable. When the previous president of Nigeria said he was going to have 30 to 35% of women, in his cabinet, and it fell short of that. And the present government said exactly the same thing. We are going to have so and so number of women in the cabinet. It fell short of that. And I was having a discussion with a policymaker, I said, where are the women? Okay, well, maybe you have really not cast your net wide enough. I am saying charity should begin at home. I am happy with what you are doing, the two of you who are here, putting women out there, and people like us telling women that if you failed once, it will not be the end of life. If you fail 2 times, it will not be the end of life. You are already trying to put a ladder through so that more women can climb and make it. At the end of it, whether you are a woman or you are a man, the basic tenets of character, competence, compassion and capacity, which we are already seeing in all spheres of our lives, should be encouraged. Finally, I still insist and believe that women should please come out, like you are preaching, come out and let your voice be heard. On radio and television programs, we want to see more women come out. Just come out.
So silence is no longer golden.
No,
yes.
That's one thing.
I'm a bit, so my own concern is about enforcement in some way. So it's a good thing when you have a tool for social advancement like federal character, but we all know the way that's been abused. And I know that in countries that have used this sensibly, what they've done is they've given it a time frame. So it's an end time. So you go, and then when you reach, so there's a cutoff. It's not just indefinitely, and people take advantage and do all sorts. Cronyism becomes, because it's interesting to note that we still have a larger amount of women in government, especially in the ministerial positions, from the north. And we say that the north is where the challenges are with women empowerment. So when women need to advance, or when men want women to advance, they manage to find a way to advance the women. Okay? Now, in terms of acculturation, there's also a challenge. So he talked about, okay, if you fall, pick yourself up again. Now, when you have a child, I said I went for a photo shoot this morning for my child, and the lady was like, oh, how come boys, and they all know ball, football, kick? I'm like, that's because you start telling them it's nurture. As soon as this child was born, somebody is throwing a ball at him and saying kick. So it's the same for women, for girls. They say, oh, when the girl falls, sorry, when the boys are a man, stand strong. Okay, so women are not even mentally empowered from childhood to say, you can do this, you can stay strong. And I can tell you the importance of a female role model in a girl's life, to show her that she can be strong and overcome any difficulty.
Very, very critical thing, mentoring. The great Stephen Covey says that the most important habit of the 21st century is helping people find their voice. Yes. We've got to find people who enable others to find their voice. And the mentoring process and the focus on women who have done things right. I used to ad nauseum repeat in my classes that, and she never paid me anything, Funke Oshibodu was the best treasurer in the country when she was banking back those days. For a very simple reason, that when the men opportunities were all over the place, a young fellow joins a bank, in 6 years he's general manager, he's not learned any banking, because he's jumping from one bank to the other. Yes. But Funke stayed in Citibank, learned her business, and was pretty good at it. And part of the reason I said it so frequently in every class I thought if I could manage to, was to get young women to see that if Funke could be seen as perhaps easily the best treasurer in the country, she could be anything she wanted to be.
Prof, I think there's something. Parents must also be responsible.
Need a role in
you see a girl child, a boy child, you treat them differently, and the rest. So
okay, but we must go. Unfortunately, time is not friendly, even when we're talking about women. So, conversation can continue. You can follow us on various social media handles, and we hope that we can raise our voice one more time next week. See you then.